Welcome to The Forest Garden, a podcast for gardeners who want to upgrade their landscapes into biodiverse food forest systems. Today, we're talking about the singular most important product of forest gardening, the food. We don't know about all of you podcast listeners, but the thing that brings us the most joy is sharing the unusual fruits and foods that we grow with friends and family, usually a couple times a year during a communal meal. And well, 'tis the season for communal meals, no matter what holidays you celebrate. Listen in today for some tasty recipes to inspire you to get your oven mitts on and get cooking. Stick with us.
So Thanksgiving's coming up.
Yeah, holidays. Holidays are approaching. We're just here to talk about some of our favorite recipes and some of our different experiments in sort of the forest gardening accoutrement.
I feel like it all comes down to right now, like the whole year of harvesting and planting is like we're in the harvest season or we're ending the harvest season. And I feel like the holidays are like the perfect time to use local seasonal ingredients, because like the classic foods of the holidays are usually local and seasonal, as opposed to pretty much all the other holidays of the year. They don't really center around food as much.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's all about gathering and seeing people you haven't seen in a while, and maybe showing off some of the cool things that you grew in your. Well, I guess also, but usually that's people like with their summer garden. So it kind of brings you to the next level of plant nerdery if you can show up with your medlars or what have you and say.
Is your family open to your food creations?
Well, yeah, that's funny you asked that. No, last year, for Christmas Eve, I showed up with a bowl of ripe medlars.
Did anyone eat them?
It was. I mean, I will say that, showing up with a bowl of seemingly rotten fruit is definitely a bold move.
No, it's bledded.
It's bledded. The thing is that they were already bledding on the tree, which is like something you don't totally always realize is that they will.
I didn't realize that.
They will bled on the tree. And I harvested them at the absolute end of the semester, so only maybe like a week or 2 weeks before Christmas Day. I showed up with a bowl of medlars, and they, the specific cultivar was Breaded Giant, and they taste just like brown cinnamon sugar. Wait, did you get to have some one year?
Yeah, we tried it last year.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Kind of like a little bit of applesauce, cinnamon, brown sugar,
applesauce.
way better than I was expecting.
Yeah, no, same. Yeah, I remember we talked about, or we had that tasting experience together. No. So yeah, I mean, definitely got some weird looks from family members, but it's a big Irish family, so people, they trusted me enough to try them. And then, I mean, I don't know. In previous years or previous gatherings, I brought toothache plant.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, it's like the pop rock sensation.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like
how'd that go over?
The parents liked it. The kids did not, which you'd think would be the opposite.
Yeah, they have to.
They just looked at me like I was a weirdo, and they were like, "Why'd you bring what?" But anyways,
it hurts my mouth.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about exactly that. Some of the different recipes or some of our favorite foods to bring to a holiday party. I guess I'll probably start off.
Go for it.
I was trying to think of some of the things that are still available to use in my garden, and one of those things is sorrel. It we've had our first snow only a few days ago here in Connecticut, which I know you don't know much about anymore, living in California.
I forgot what snow is after living 8 months in the West Coast.
So we had our first snow, but the sorrel is completely unaffected. It's a really hardy perennial vegetable, perennial green. And so last year I made, so the first thing you think of when you have sorrel is sorrel soup. And personally, I tried making sorrel soup, and it was okay. There's plenty of recipes online for sorrel soup.
Does it keep the lemony flavor when you cook it?
See, that's the thing, is I didn't really... the lemony flavor didn't totally connect.
That's the best part of sorrel.
Yeah. It's it tastes like a citrusy leaf. Because you make it with a bone broth. So really, what you get is this delicious soup, but it did not have the sorrel attributes that I expected.
Yeah.
Then, though, my friend who's Polish brought me some that her mom had made, and it was amazing. And it was totally it was sorrel soup the right way, because it's an Eastern European thing. But I still wouldn't say that it was super lemony. So I was trying to think of some other things to make out of the sorrel leaves, and what the ball ended up landing on was sort of a variation on stuffed grape leaves, kind of.
Ooh, very nice.
or stuffed dates. And we had medjool dates around, and I think what happened is we just found a stuffed dates recipe that used chunks of blue cheese. And the idea was that you did a bake on a baking sheet with the dates and blue cheese, and you drizzled honey on it, and the blue cheese and the honey would like melt into the date. And
that sounds great.
Yeah, it was delicious, but then add the lemony flavor of the sorrel onto that. So
I think that'd be pretty good.
So it was amazing. It was like one of the best things I've ever created out of.
If you want to be extra local, maybe you could do like a Chinese date or something. Can you grow Chinese dates in this climate?
What's the
Sisyphus?
Oh, so you mean jujube?
Jujubes, yeah.
Oh, yeah, we can grow those here.
I wonder if you could stuff. I'm sure you can. I think I've even seen those stuffed with walnuts.
I've never had do they taste just like dates? I've never had a jujube before.
They are similar dates. They look like dates. I mean, first off, you can eat them like an apple, like when they're green and they're crunchy. They're just like sugar sweet, no acidity. And actually, those are a lot of people prefer that. I think I might even prefer that stage, because they're not ripe yet, but they're full of sugar, so they're actually great to eat. And then there's, when they dry up, they turn brown, wrinkled, they look like a date. They're a little bit like more fibrous and chewier than how dates are kind of like fudgy, they're like buttery.
It's the best thing about them, yeah.
These are a little bit more drier, a little more I don't want to say papery, but they have a little bit more coarse texture.
Kind of like starchy almost?
Yeah, more just fibrous and sweet, just like if you can imagine that. I mean, you chew them up and they're fine. But not quite as like umptuous as a date, I guess, maybe a good word. But I mean, they grow so well, and they're cold hardy.
Yeah, and they're like salt. I mean, they're tolerant of urban conditions. You can grow them like in your hill strip. Yeah, and you could.
So I've seen them stuffed before. Huh. Just maybe that's a nice, maybe with some blue cheese and sorrel and honey. That'd be good.
Yeah, maybe for the next iteration. No, totally. And just to sort of sum up that idea, basically, it was just taking the dates, putting the blue cheese in. You could also throw in like some bacon or prosciutto, and then just like a light bake. And I can't remember if we wrapped the sorrel leaves around them first or not, but one thing you do have to do is you have to de-stem the sorrel leaf by using a kitchen knife to take out the stem, and then you want to have a pretty big sorrel leaf. So it's like the garden sorrel, and there's a specific cultivar that you can get from Richter's in Canada, and it's just a non-flowering type that creates really big leaves. So that's what I would, if you want to try it. I can't remember if we baked it with the sorrel leaves around it the first time when it worked out awesome, but the second time I tried to do it, I did that, and I put them in there, and I was so excited because it's like, oh, this is like the most delicious creation I've ever made. And then I did it for too long, and they came out and they were like really crispy, and you couldn't taste the sorrel leaf anymore. So you want to be careful not to do that, and like really like you're just probably broiling them with the door open for like 5 minutes for the cheese to melt.
Just a quick blast.
Because you don't want to burn the leaves. Well, I'll pass it back off to you. Give me some plant knowledge, some food knowledge.
That one's good. That one's like something you could serve at a holiday party and people would be impressed. And I guess dried persimmons, hoshigaki, is something I wanted to talk about. And I guess that's equally as impressive, but it's just a single ingredient sort of thing. Hoshigaki comes from Japan. I wish I knew more about the background and the history of it. It's a traditional way of preserving the harvest of predominantly the Haichia variety, the astringent variety of persimmons. For those unfamiliar, there's the astringent and non-astringent varieties, and there's even like subcategories, ones that will stay astringent if they're pollinated, and ones that will only be astringent if they're unpollinated. Like there's just different combinations. Traditionally, they use the Haichia variety, which is a astringent variety, so it dries out your mouth if you eat it too soon. So the fruits will, they'll mature on the tree, so they'll be nice, have a nice color, but they won't be ripe yet. They'll still be hard, so you have to wait for those to be ripe before you eat them. But there is a way you can do something with them before they finish ripening.
You can do the alcohol in the skin. Have you heard of that?
Well, no. I mean, there's like alcohol and ethylene. There's ways to
it's like you can just take like regular like vodka and you just use like a needle or a syringe, and then you just poke it and put in the tiniest little drop, and it eliminates the astringency.
You've tried that?
I just saw someone posting about it on Facebook. I haven't tried it myself, but a bunch of people in the comments were like, "I did it and it worked." So yeah, I guess that I mean, this is just hearsay, but
I saw it on TikTok.
Yeah, no, but yeah, I mean, I don't know why the guy would lie. Especially with all those other people. And also for anyone who hasn't experienced astringency, it's like the feeling of like cotton mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Or like if you get like a face wash that's astringent and you feel your face tingling, imagine that inside of your mouth. It's not maybe the best experience.
Yeah, no, it's pretty unpleasant. And I think that's the trees signal evolutionarily to tell the animals, hey, my seeds aren't quite ready yet, so don't eat my flesh. Or maybe the seeds are ready, but like it doesn't quite want you to take the fruit until much later in the year. So whatever evolutionary reason why the tree would have that, but it doesn't let you eat it sooner than it's ready. So yeah, so Hoshigaki is traditionally with the Haichia, or maybe there's lots of other astringent varieties like the Saijo or the chocolate one, which I got to try this year. And so essentially the process is after you've harvested all of your persimmons, and this year, thankfully, I can say I'm speaking from experience because I've done this with store-bought persimmons before, and kind of just as an experiment because like I only buy 2 at a time, so I would rather just eat them fresh. But when you harvest a persimmon tree, like they are loaded. Like this thing just had panicles of persimmons dripping off of this just unfertilized, unwatered neighborhood tree in Sacramento. So I harvested a ton, as much as I could take, and you can only eat so many, and you also like want to do something with them. Because if you just let them ripen up, they're all going to be ready at the same time. So like, how can you preserve your harvest? And so you take a potato peeler, the first step. You grab the persimmons. Oh, and when you pick them, you want to leave the calyx, the dried up areas around the petals, the green top of a persimmon. You kind of want to leave that in place.
It's a little hat.
Little hat, yeah. You want to leave that in place, and you hold on to it, and you take the potato peeler and you peel off a layer. Well, you can even use a knife, but the knife will probably get off some of the flesh too, but either way.
And at this point, it's like a hard, like, it's not like the persimmons that we have here where they're like soft and mushy. Like, it's a hard.
Yeah, it
like,
has to be hard, otherwise
it's like just a pear kind of.
Yeah, it's between a very hard apple and like a pear that's maybe starting to ripen. You probably don't want to wait too long after it start getting soft. You're removing all the skin basically. Take some time if you've got dozens of pounds of persimmons. I mean, a lot of the work's already done, but there's a lot of ways to screw it up. And I've been doing this for maybe a couple years now, so I've had a couple years of screw ups that I can share. So when you're storing the persimmon, you want to try to do it outdoors if possible. There might be a certain limit to how cold you want to do it, but I know they do this in like Russia and other parts of very cold climate parts of the world. So I think outdoors is best. I've tried to do it indoors and it gets moldy. Just like it's warmer and there's like things floating around and it's just not as clean as environment as outside. I mean, outside there's going to be contamination too, but it's going to be colder, and I think it's just a better way of doing it. And also, like if you just put the persimmon on a table or a surface of some kind, what's going to happen? Like the area where it's touching the table, that's going to start to rot because it's really super humid and moist and it never dries out. So either you're walking out and turning your persimmons every day, which is a hassle, which you're not going to do, or you can hang them up on a string, and that's kind of traditionally how if you Google search Hoshigaki, you see these beautiful like garlands of dried persimmons. It's very it's like orange and brown and black.
It's like an ornament.
Yeah, it's very seasonal looking. And so you can basically attach either end. That's why you leave the sepals or the calyxes on the fruit, so you can tie the string around it either end, and then you hang that string with 2 persimmons on either side over like a pole or something, and you can just kind of do that. Or I've even seen it like you take a string that's strong enough and you hang like along the string maybe every 6 inches another persimmon. You have a whole like another garland, and you can just like tie that up on your porch and give your neighbors something to look at and yell at you for. Maybe they'll be into it.
I've also seen people who pierce them like a screw, and they would like push the screw into it and then tie the screw around and then
to hang it.
Yeah, to hang it. So what's the deal with that? You don't like just you don't need to pierce it. That's just like an easier way to hang it.
Well, yeah. So if you have the calyx on there, you can just wrap the string around that, and you don't need to pierce it. And I don't know if that's better or worse or the same for the preservation of it. Like, is that hole gonna allow contaminants to get in and like make it rot? Maybe not if your friend's doing it and finding success, or the person you saw. But anyway, so you hang it up, and the amount of time it takes can vary from there might be a more precise amount, but it kind of varies on your humidity and the temperature. I've done it for, I'd say like at least a month, and that's what I find the best for this. But I think other people go for a little bit longer, a little bit shorter. But what happens is, as time goes by, whether you want to do it every day or every week, to break up the pulp on the inside, you got to go around and massage the fruit occasionally. So it's almost like the Kobe beef of fruit. And so you're massaging the fruit, and that's breaking up the pulp, that's drawing out the sugars and allowing the drying process to happen faster. And so by the end of it, it's this coolest thing. It's like, it looks like it's been dusted with powdered sugar. Like all these sugar crystals are surrounding the outside. And I'm not even sure, like, chemically why that is, like why the sugar gets drawn out in that way. Maybe it's just part of the drying process. It's kind of beautiful, I think, and extremely tasty. So after the 4 to 8 weeks is up, you can remove the persimmons and eat them. And you might even be able to store them for longer. I think after they're done drying, you can keep them in the freezer. You can keep them in the refrigerator for a very long time. I don't even know how long. But you just want to make sure they stay dry, because as soon as they get wet again, they're going to be super perishable. Or if they get like in a humid environment, they're gonna rot. But yeah, you can slice them. You can eat them out of hand, which is good too. I've had them frozen, which is really nice. It's like a frozen treat. It's a strange, if you've never had dried persimmons, it's a strange dried fruit, because you're used to what kind of dried fruits, like
mango, or what you buy in the store,
raisins,
banana maybe.
There's sugar, there's starch, there's acid, there's like all these different flavors. But with persimmons, it's like straight up sugar. Like there's a little bit of flavor there, but it's really just sugar and texture, and it kind of has a gummy texture too. So it's the closest thing I've found to candy or like gummy bears or something in the fruit world, in the dried fruit. So really nice. I would say if you're going to buy high chia or astringent variety persimmons, because again, remember, there's the non-astringent ones, like the fuyus. They're more round. They look like a kind of a flat tomato that you can eat at any stage. You can eat them crunchy, and you can even take slices and just immediately throw them into the dehydrator. And I don't know if that's technically Hoshigaki or if it has to be the astringent variety, but that's the other option, is to go with the fuyus. But regardless, if you're going to buy the astringent ones, the high chias, you buy them in around this time of year, like Thanksgiving, and you eat them
November-ish,
eat them at Christmas. Buy them in Thanksgiving, eat them at Christmas, because that's how long it takes for them to ripen. And it takes about that long, for them to ripen, even if you've peeled and dried them as well. So it can, it's not for the impatient. But if you have a lot of them, it's a good way to preserve the harvest.
Oh, it sounds like a perfect sort of holiday treat, kind of. Also, just like I imagine the ornamental side of it, where it's just like hanging from your the front of your house.
It's a good conversation piece.
I mean, here on the East Coast, we don't have nearly as many Asian persimmons, although I will say that I was lucky enough to harvest 1 or 2 fallen persimmons from the Nikita's Gift that's on campus at UMass.
I bet you could do Hoshigaki with even just American persimmon too.
Well, with American persimmons, I'm not sure how that would work out, because they, most of the time when you're eating them, they're almost rotten in the first place. But you're right in terms of they're an astringent type.
Yeah, if you could get them when they're hard, and peel them and dry them, it probably would work.
That's an interesting thing to try out, because I've been stumbling into, I guess not stumbling, I've been going to arboretums and places that have, American persimmons, and a lot of the seedling types aren't like amazing tasting. They're like, even when they're like super ripe, like they like only really the cultivars are like stand out, and then the seedlings are like okay. But on the topic of American persimmons, we have this book here, which is called Forage, Harvest, Feast, A Wild-Inspired Cuisine by Marie Villoen. I don't totally know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And there's an entire section of the book specifically on persimmons, American persimmons. And there's several different recipes here for our listeners. I mean, definitely a book to consider. There's beautiful photographs. I mean, sunchoke soup with persimmon prickly ash oil.
Yeah, this is next level.
And the photo just says American persimmons as an ornament in the background of this. I don't even know how to describe it. A soup drizzled with prickly ash, and it looks delicious.
This is really what foraging in temperate climate needs to elevate the craft and elevate the foods to a new level of cuisine and not just like something you eat here and there when you can find it.
Yeah, there's one recipe that's really, really short from the persimmon section that I'm going to talk about here. So it's a drink. It's been named Twilight. So muddling jelly-ripe persimmons with cognac yields a very flavorful, thick maceration. The shaken drink, lifted with spicebush and grounded with bitters, is the color of fall twilights before the long nights arrive hard and early. And so basically, to make the persimmon cognac, you just need 4 ripe American persimmons. It says to peel them and finely chop them, which I guess that's a little questionable because you can't really chop a ripe American persimmon. I wonder how that's done. But whatever,
Sounds messy.
So I mean, maybe this, although this is in the American persimmon section, that was done with Asian persimmons. But either way, it's worth trying. If they're peeling them, I mean, if I was going to do this, I would probably either do it with a super ripe American persimmon and then not chop it because it's going to be mushy anyway, or it would be done with a store-bought persimmon and then you would peel it. Yeah, so 4 ripe persimmons and then a half a cup of brandy, and basically in a jug. You muddle the persimmons with the cognac, and after an hour, strain the cognac through a fine mesh sieve, pushing against the sieve to squeeze as much of the fruit out as possible. And then to make the cocktail, you just take 3 fluid ounces of the persimmon cognac that you made, mix it with 1 fluid ounce of bitters, and 1 fluid ounce of spicebush clementine cordial, which is something that you will have to buy this book to figure out how to make. Or I suppose you could substitute the spicebush cordial with something else.
That sounds amazing.
I know. Now I want to see what the spicebush.
It's one of those recipe books that refers to another recipe in one recipe, so you kind of have to.
You're forced to just harvest things year round. Oh, here it is: spicebush clementine cordial. Well, I'm sure you could substitute the spicebush for something else. This seems like.
Well, you have to use spicebush.
5 ounces of dried spicebush fruit. That's really exciting. Well, anyways, pick up the book and you can delve into it. There's a lot of really awesome stuff in here. Over the summer, though, I did meet someone who was, or earlier in the fall, rather, someone whose favorite, his name is Henry Lappin, and he's up at Pioneer Valley Co-housing in Amherst area, and he was just making spicebush breads and cakes and, all these different things out of spicebush, which, spicebush tastes like pepper. So I was thinking, how, but, you can use the leaves, too, I guess?
Really? There are so many unique ways to use the foods that are growing around us that we just don't know about yet, and it's cool to hear that of people who are delving into it and getting obsessed with one plant and how many different ways you could use this one plant.
Yeah, and so twigs, apparently you can use the twigs, the leaves, the flowers, and the fruit, which is wild. Wow. I never knew. I knew that the leaves had a spicy kind of deal that just weren't as intense as the fruit, but I didn't know you could actually make them into stuff. Okay, do you want to tell us about your pecan oil?
Oh yeah, well, so this is another very simple 1-ingredient recipe because I'm not a very great chef, so I focus on the things that I can't screw up. So I like making nut butters, and one nut butter that people aren't familiar with is, everyone knows peanut butter and almond butter, but pecan butter is absolutely delicious. And I feel like it's starting to catch on. Have you seen it at farmers markets around here? Okay, so
it's definitely I feel like people are if you go to Trader Joe's or something, there's sort of an obscure area where there's different nut butters.
Yeah, so it's starting to get some recognition. But I tried making it. This was not recently. This was a couple years ago. But I want to make it again this year because I've been so obsessed with walnuts the last couple years. I need to change my nuts a little bit. And so when I made it previously, I think really simple recipe, but I think the trick is, and this goes for when you want to use almost any nut, is to give it a quick roast before you use it in any recipe. And that goes for walnuts, that goes for even almonds, or but especially pecans too, because pecans are great raw. I like them just straight up raw. And if you want the maximum health benefits from nuts, you probably want to eat them raw. But if you want the best flavor and the best kind of aroma of what you're making, give them a toast. But you want to coat them in a little bit of oil first. It can be olive oil or sunflower oil, whatever you have around. And just be careful not to burn them, because I've burned a lot of nuts before just giving them a roast in the oven. So lower temperatures, maybe 300 instead of 350. Maybe 10 minutes, give them a stir, and another 10 minutes. And that might be more than enough, so you want to check on them. And I just put them in a food processor. When I did it, I don't know if it was just the nuts I was using. I was using ones growing in my backyard, which was really cool. I had this 100-year-old pecan tree in Nashville.
That is really cool.
Yeah, just rained pecans. It was the coolest thing. So I used that tree. So I don't know if it was like the oil content, but I did need to add a bit of extra oil, and I think I might have used olive oil, or now I would probably use something a little bit more transparent, like a sunflower oil that doesn't taste like anything. You add a little bit of sunflower oil or whatever oil you have around until you get the consistency of a nut butter. You kind of have to take it out of the food processor or take a spoon and like scrape it off the sides a bit. It takes a minute. It takes maybe 10 minutes to fully get into consistency you want. But after that, it's amazing. It's so jam-packed with flavor and very rich, and it has a natural sweetness. You can put some honey in it if you like a sweet nut butter, but it doesn't even need much sugar or sweetness because it already has that like natural pecan flavor to it. And I would put it on breads. I would put it in smoothies, just anywhere you'd use peanut butter. It's fantastic and a great topper for anything. So not a very complicated, fancy recipe, but something that I like around the holidays. It's super seasonal.
No, you could definitely. I mean, I imagine you could probably do that with like hickories too. I don't know.
It'd be delicious with hickories. Oh my god! Like I've never tried that.
Like a shagbark or something, or
they don't last long enough for me to put them in a nut butter. So I'm just eating them straight out of the shell.
Yeah, no,
hickories almost have like a maple syrup taste to them, like right out of the like just raw, which is something you kind of get with pecan, but like you get it even more with hickory.
Yeah.
Oh, hickory nut butter, Jesus! Yeah, I want to try that.
No, I feel like I don't know. I feel like hickories, especially shagbark hickory, are just like the most undervalued nut tree, native nut tree in our Western culture.
Maybe we try a hicon next.
Yeah,
hicon nut butter.
Although from Jesse Markson, who we interviewed last year, told me one time that they don't apparently fill very well.
They don't. Yeah, at Hark we had like a collection of hicons. It was unbelievable. Just like you're walking through these 40-year-old orchards of hicon trees, all these different varieties, just old relict types, mixed in with regular hickories too, and maybe some pecans. And you'd find some that had nuts in them, and some of them would be huge. Like I think I gave you.
Yeah, I still have them. Yeah.
Yeah, they're one of the.
They fit in the size of your palm.
I think like a Burlington or some of the other hicon varieties. I can't recall. There's a lot of them. Well, there's not that many, but there's too many for me to remember. But yeah, they're much bigger than a pecan. They're probably like the size of like 2 or 3 inches long. But every one of those was empty. Yeah. And so I wouldn't like that if I grew a tree for
40 years,
20, 30 years.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
And it's empty. So you just grow pecans. It's
even more. For hickories, shagbark I think is one of my favorite trees just because of. It's shaggy bark. It's a beautiful tree, and it's got a wonderful habit. But no, there's selections of shagbark hickory that have been named, like Granger, and then Lorraine, which is a seedling of Granger. Pretty hard to find, but if anybody's interested in growing hickory trees in their landscape to then make these hickory butters, those are some to look out for.
And what did you learn this year as far as growing these from seed? And one of the dangers to watch out for.
Do not entrust your nuts with with someone else and go away for a month and come back to find them all eaten by rodents. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you need to really protect you can't just plant these in the ground. And even when they're in a greenhouse with people who take care of them and water them many times a day, or 1 or 2 times a day. It's funny, I actually had to put up a sign saying, do not overwater. Oh, yeah. Because, it's their job just to water plants. It was like plant daycare. So I really thought that these nuts were, going to be trees when I came back, and they were just holes in cups of soil. So thank you for the
mousetraps.
Yeah.
Mousetraps are your friend.
It was actually probably chipmunks, I think, really that got them. Because I've seen chipmunks in that greenhouse, but I've never seen a mouse. But anyways, moving on. This will be the last thing that we talk about here. I am also not an incredible chef, but one thing that I do make well is risotto. It's pretty hard to mess it up, Actually, some people have a really hard time with risotto because it takes a long time to make. You have to constantly stir it. You're constantly adding the broth. And my favorite thing to make is mushroom risotto. At my folks' place during, 2020, I was planting all sorts of stuff over there. And I inoculated a pretty large bed of wood chips with wine caps. Yeah, 3 years later, in terms of seasons, it's 2022, and I planted in 2020, so technically that's 2 years. But in terms of summers, it's been 3 summers. And the wine caps go crazy in the fall. And so they've been harvesting anywhere between 8 ounces to a pound or a pound and a half of wine caps every day, starting in like September up until the leaf drop, like a few weeks, like maybe like mid-November or early November, they stopped harvesting. And that was only because the mushrooms were covered in leaves, so up from the sugar maple that they're under. Wow. So it's not like they weren't still fruiting, but they just couldn't get them. And
that's
it was
epic.
Just like too many wine caps to know what to do with. So my mom and my dad ate plenty of mushrooms and all sorts of different meals and processed them into. Generally, what you do is you just kind of make a sauce and then you freeze it. Or you can even just like do a quick saute and then freeze it. But mushroom risotto is one of my favorite things. And usually you just get like the brown mushrooms you buy at the store. That's generally what you throw in there. But yeah, wine caps work just as well. I mean, wine caps taste delicious. The only maybe negative is aesthetically it makes the risotto brown. When you serve a brown risotto to someone, if they're really snobby about having their creamy risotto look like sort of light tan color, it's no longer that color. The sort of
get over it.
Yeah, no, I mean it tastes delicious. But when I told that to my brother, he was like, "Ew, brown risotto," and I was like, "What's your problem?" An extra level to this, for those of us who are also nut nerds, is you can make a mushroom and chestnut risotto. You could just go to the store and buy some sweet chestnuts that were imported from Europe or whatever. But hopefully, if you're listening to this podcast, you're nerdy enough to have a friend with a chestnut tree or a chestnut tree of your own, or know of one planted nearby. And a few months ago, you went out and you harvested some. And right about now is around the time that the stores are running dry. They don't last forever. Chestnuts don't have like an amazing storage capacity. But if you process them and they're still in your fridge and you don't know what to do with them, this is a great use. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to make risotto like you would normally, where, you do the mushrooms on the side, you kind of cook them down, you're stirring the risotto, you're adding your broth, and then towards the end, you add your mushrooms. The chestnuts, after they've been either boiled or roasted in the oven, you're just going to peel them and then chop them really to whatever size you want. The recipes that I saw had just like them halved, but really I think that more of a quartered size would be better. Mm-hmm. And then personally, the chestnut for me brings like a sweetness to the risotto, but I was sort of lucky to harvest there were Chinese chestnuts that I harvested from at this plantation in Connecticut, where there's a ridiculous amount of chinkapins planted nearby. And so my hypothesis, I mean, we harvested from some of the chinkapins, but my hypothesis is that the chinkapins provided a sweetness to the Chinese chestnuts, because I've had Chinese chestnuts before that are like just kind of starchy. They're not super sweet, and
they vary a lot.
Yeah, even like early on, I remember like really far back in our podcast history, I was like, Chinese chestnuts aren't as good because they don't taste as good. And you were like, what do you mean? Like, it's just blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. I had some Chinese chestnuts around them that just were not like amazing. They didn't knock my socks off. And now these days, I've had Chinese chestnuts that were like super sweet, like candy.
Yeah, we did, when I was at the Center for Agroforestry, there was some research on different cultivars and their different like sensory characteristics, like aroma, color, and flavor. And so we did a lot of taste tests. And yeah, it'd run the gamut. Like some of them tasted just like corn, like sweet corn, like so sweet and starchy. Some of them were dark and like caramely almost. And then other ones, especially after tasting those first two, would be almost like no sweetness and almost a little bitter,
like a dry bread.
Yeah, but these were all like known cultivars for production for nuts. So it was like if I tried that one for the first time, I was like, I don't really like chestnuts very much. I like the sweeter ones.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I guess that in terms of like what this dish will end up tasting like, it really does rely a lot on what your chestnuts taste like, because they'll be a big part of the meal that like the flavor will really be there. And also, obviously, you're throwing in a lot of Parmesan, and the Parmesan is going to make that creamy risotto. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, it's just an easy thing to make. It's not anyone can make risotto, an easy dish to bring to a family gathering. So yeah, that's our little rant. Unless you have any other last.
No, that's it for me. I'm inspired to make a bunch more recipes for Thanksgiving and other holidays.
Yeah. Well, hope everyone enjoyed, and if you have anything to share with us, we'll probably throw a post on Instagram closer to the holidays, and we'd love to hear what sort of plant nerd recipes everyone has. So.
Yeah, let us know your favorites.
All right, until next time.